Thank you very much for coming today. We really appreciate it. On behalf of the panel, I really want to thank you for your time and energy today and for taking the time to sit in on this discussion today. If we talk about resilience, I'm having to really put resilience into action right now because I'm in Canada in my sister's basement because I had COVID. My family and I came back to Canada for the winter holidays, and unfortunately, my sons and I contracted COVID. We tested positive twice, so we're still here. We're testing again tomorrow and hopefully flying back in a couple days. So I want to thank the WEP committee right now for demonstrating resilience in their own way to make this very unique session happen in terms of me moderating virtually. So thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate your time, and I know the panel does too. So I'm going to just quickly introduce the panel today. So we have Tala. Tala, can you raise your hand? Okay, so Tala has her doctorate in clinical psychology from King's College London. And she has 20 years experience, more than 20 years experience working therapeutically with children, adults, and their families in Jeddah. Dana, raise your hand. Okay. Dana is the newly appointed assistant professor in the physical and engineering division at KAUST. She has her PhD in bioengineering from Imperial College in London. As well, she has pursued her postdoc training at MIT in 2019 in the US. Husein, I can't see you right now, but just raise your hand. Husein founded the Saudi Rowing Federation in 2019 with the help of the Saudi Olympic Committee. He was a gold medalist at the Asian Continental Qualifiers for the 2021 World Indoor Rowing Championships. And in May 2021, he qualified for the Tokyo Olympics to become the first Saudi Olympic rower to represent the kingdom. And lastly, my dear friend Caterina, raise your hand. Caterina and I have known each other for a number of years. She's from Italy. She's currently the project coordinator for KAUST Smart Health Initiative. And she has truly devoted her life to helping people to transform themselves both mentally and physically. She is a certified personal trainer and is currently completing a certification to be a life coach. And lastly, myself, I'm currently working as an instructional coach for teachers at the KAUST School. I've been with my family here for 6 years. I'm an educational consultant. I'm a workshop leader and a podcaster. So today, we're going to look at the theme of resilience itself. And the word resilience is being thrown around all over the world in different organizations, and everybody talks about the importance of resilience. We're not here today to tell you what resilience means. We're only here today to share our own stories and to really double click on the word resilience and really highlight certain themes that we feel as a panel really rise to the top in terms of if we're going to build resilience in our life, then we absolutely need to put key fundamentals into place in our life. So the first one is definitely having a clearly defined life purpose. If we're going to be resilient, we absolutely have to have a clearly defined life purpose. The second one is to be aware of our own inner voice and what we say to ourselves. And our inner voice plays a critical role in building resilience. The third area that we're going to unpack today is that idea of challenge. And oftentimes we try to live within certain comfort zones. But if we're going to build resilience and do great things in life, we absolutely have to push ourselves to take on difficult challenges. And the last thing is, and this is rooted in evidence, is that many people suffer from imposter syndrome, including top performers, whether they're a gold medalist in the Olympics, whether they're a CEO of a company, whatever it is, many people suffer from this idea of imposter syndrome. So we're going to really unpack the importance of overcoming imposter syndrome today. So again, resilience means different things to different people at different times. So it's difficult to have one clearly defined definition because each of us lives life in our own way, and we have our own challenges and ways that we approach the world. So resilience means different things to different people. But I want you to reflect just for a moment. I want to take 30 seconds or a minute of silence. And I want you to reflect on what resilience means to you in your own life. So just think about where you've come from, the things you've done in your own life, the things you struggle with. What does resilience mean to you? So just take a moment to think about that. And in particular, think about ways that you've shown up in the world that have allowed you to demonstrate your own level of resilience in whatever it is you're doing, whether it be your studies, whether it be as a parent, as a husband, as a wife, as a girlfriend or boyfriend. How have you shown resilience in your relationships, in your work, in your personal life? So for the sake of this panel discussion today, I'm going to share the Penn State University Positive Psychology program's definition of resilience. And what they say is resilience is characterized by the ability to bounce back from negative emotional experiences and by being able to flexibly adapt to the changing demands of stressful experiences. So that's the definition that they teach their students. There are different definitions of resilience, but this is one that really stands out to me as really clearly identifying what resilience means. And context definitely matters in our own life. And this is why resilience means different things to different people at different times. So context really matters, our life context. And I think I'll let you read it. I won't read it, but this idea of resilience is about understanding our own unique journeys. And it really is about spending time to reflect on our own lives and what got us to this point, and to be really aware of our own personal narratives. And being aware of our own personal narratives is a critical step forward in the process of being able to be more resilient and to perform at our best. Okay. So again, I've been able to interview more than 190 people on my podcast, and I've learned so much about their stories of resilience. And whether it be an Olympian striving to win a gold medal, whether it be a professional golfer or a world-renowned researcher, everybody really does have their own story, and they have their own context. And we're going to hear the stories of the panelists today. But the thing in common is that when we're pursuing great things in life and we're trying to be our very best, that it's never easy. And a quote that stands out to me is, "Out of the suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." So it's not an easy journey. And I've spoken to people and I will ask them sometimes, "Oh, how's your day going?" Or "How have things been going lately with your project?" And they'll say, "I'm living the dream, all is good." But below the surface, I know all is not good. You know, life is a struggle. And when we're pursuing excellence in life and trying to be our best and do our best, we will encounter struggles. And it's how we deal with that failure that helps us to build resilience. And it's really looking through that lens and having clarity about our own lives and what it is we want that is most important, and being aware of that. So I'm going to hand it over to Dana right now, and Dana's going to take about 5 or 6 minutes to really share her story. And each panelist will now have that opportunity. So Dana, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Andy, for that introduction. So what I wanted to share with you guys today is a story that I haven't shared before in any interviews or something like that. And it isn't about my personal resilience. It's rather about how throughout my career and even before starting off my career, how I was inspired and fueled by resilient people in my life. And so the first role model that really helped me define my purpose or my goal in life was my great aunt. She's a pediatrician. Her name is Dr. Alsulaiman. And she was also a breast cancer fighter. And among her and many other people, I decided to dedicate my PhD towards developing early diagnostic tools for cancer. So she was kind of inspiration in many different ways as a strong female role model, but also her fight with cancer and her perseverance through it made me decide to dedicate my PhD towards that. So that was fine. I started off my PhD, and right in the middle of it, midway, I was in Imperial College London in the UK, and right in the middle of it, my mum gave me a call from Canada. She was in Canada, and she gave me a call, and it was the most devastating news in the world for me. And it was that my father was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. And it was a shock to me in my body. And I just remember what happened before. I was upstairs making some tea, and then I don't remember anything after that, after the phone call. I just remember waking up to a pair of paramedics saying, "You have a fever." And you know, it was the worst experience of my life because I did not expect it. Right? Every day, us researchers, maybe you're working with clinical samples, but they're numbers, right? They're case studies and they're numbers, and you would never expect that it would hit so close to home. And so for me, it was that shock. And so after that, of course, I asked my supervisor to take time off of my PhD, which was already very short. I was already, I think, 3.5 years of funding. So, of course, he agreed and supported me to go off to Canada. So I went off over there, and the few months that I spent over there in Canada, I would say, were the most transformational for me as a person, because I started from something so low, but by the end of it, I was recharged for the rest of my life, and I knew what my purpose was. So among the many different negative emotions that I faced when I first went to Canada, the worst one, I would say, is the feeling of helplessness. I hated that feeling. My goal was always to help people, and just knowing, you know, somebody sitting right by me and I could not help them, even if I dedicated my life towards understanding cancer, how can I detect it, how can I help so many lives, but my own father I couldn't help, right? So that feeling was the worst feeling ever. It really put me down. But what helped me to get out of that was, in fact, seeing my father and seeing how he responded to the news, how he responded to the news of his diagnosis, and how he pushed through every stage of the way, how he pushed through the therapy and all the crippling side effects and symptoms and all the awful, you know, things that you never hear about. And seeing my family also all around my father, and we're all affected by it. And seeing his resilience through it made me think of the situation in a different way. Rather than being discouraged, I was actually encouraged more than ever. And I started thinking, you know, this is a sign. Maybe I am in the right field and I've chosen the right thing. And if I cannot help my father now, then maybe one of these technologies that we develop in the lab now or in 5 years or in 10 years can end up helping a single person, maybe in a small way, but a significant way. So I've changed my outlook from that day onwards to, you know, come back. So I came back to the UK and continued my PhD. And of course, I had less time. So I had to work double the time, but it was all fine. You know, people would see me in the lab for hours and hours and hours over the weekends and so on, but that was fine. I put a smile on because I knew one day, you know, hopefully this should help someone. And so Andy brought up a very interesting theme of, you know, having the purpose, and that's when I knew I had a purpose. And that's about it. That's where my story leads me today, and this is what I wanted to share with you, is that, even if you are in the lab for hours, and I remember the years of my PhD and my master's and so on, and in every journey in life, right, you will have to persevere and push through something. Having that purpose, that transformational purpose, that intention will help you push through it. That's what helped me. I think that's about it for my story. And I will
Okay,
hand it over.
Dana, thank you very much for sharing. And when I hear your story, and we haven't met in person yet, but we will. And what really comes alive is that idea of purpose, and in particular, the power of reframing. And you were in a position where you really had to reframe your own life circumstances to make more sense of them. And that's a beautiful story you shared. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand it over to Husein now to share a bit about his journey.
Thank you, Andy. Hello, everybody. So I started rowing in Cambridge when I was doing my master's, and at the late age of 22, 23, which is quite late relatively. And initially it was supposed to be a social activity. I did it with a friend, but I got hooked, and it turned into a year of it just took over basically, and I spent extra hours training and improved quicker than my teammates in college. Upon graduation, the coach really encouraged me to take it seriously and represent internationally. And at the time, there was no Saudi Rowing Federation, there's no representation at all, and I didn't really know what rowing was outside the realms of this university. It really was a bubble. So I quickly learned that the Olympics is the pinnacle, and everything centers around it. And at this point, I had 3 years left to Tokyo. So I, without high hopes, sent an email to the top rowing clubs in London asking them if they thought it was possible for me to get to where I am now to qualify to Tokyo. A couple of them didn't reply, a few of them said no, 2 of them said yes, come in for an interview. So I did, and that's where I met my coach, Bill, and he decided to, himself was a silver medalist in Tokyo in '64, loads of experience, and he thought it was worth it, and extremely charismatic guy, and I was sold. At this point, you have to know that I wasn't extremely highly motivated to do this. It was kind of a quick decision, there's an opportunity, let's go for it. So we set off and represented Saudi at the Asian Games 1 year later. That's when we were going to reassess. And thankfully, I reached a level that I was supposed to reach in 2 years in the space of 1. So that's when we knew, okay, this is cool. In Indonesia, my parents came to watch me. And my mom actually, it was the first time she came up to me there and she said, can I see your physio? I said, why? She said, oh, there's this thing bothering me on my ribs, this lump. And then I just, that's, in my head, I'm like, it's not something a physio can really do much about. Anyway, she saw him, and again, he didn't really know. So we went back to London, and that's when she was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which it's of course it's terminal. So then we knew there wasn't much time left. So I mentioned the motivation at first because this is the point where I did the rowing not for myself anymore. It was to give something back to my family and my parents. That there was a complete shift. And the more time I spent away from them, the more I don't know, with rowing it was a love-hate thing, because it meant I had to spend time away from my parents, especially my mom, whose time was limited. But at the same time, she definitely didn't want to stop, me to stop for her. So it was a bit of a situation. Anyway, so obviously continued training. COVID happened, and then the Olympics were postponed a year. So immediately I flew back. I was training in California, flew back to Germany, where she was being treated, spent 2 months, 3 months there, and where she passed away. This was the summer of 2020. And then came back to Saudi, and was stuck here, couldn't travel. And at this point, I mean, my perspective on life completely changed. I thought the Olympics was some socially constructed thing, and I just didn't care. I completely wanted to continue to give something back to the family who've given me so much. And so flew back to California, trained in Saudi, then flew back to California in February, where we kind of overtrained to make up for some lost time on the water. And when I flew to Tokyo for my qualification race, and this is the first time I've been injured in 4 years. My ribs on the left broke, penetrating my lung and collapsing it. And this was when I arrived in Tokyo for the qualification race. Doctors recommended I don't continue, but I did, thankfully, and qualified, and came back to London, did surgery. At this point, there was like a month left, and then I caught COVID, which even reduced my ability to breathe even more. And I had to fully accept the fact that I may go to Tokyo and come last. That was very difficult to accept, but in the end, went and thankfully got to the quarterfinals and was flag bearer. So it all worked out. But yeah, it's just interesting to see how the motivation completely changed from yourself to that of giving. It was completely selfless, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but I'm going to hand over to the next speaker.
Okay, so Husein, thank you for sharing your story. And what really comes alive for me when I listened to your story was this idea that you had really developed a passion for rowing. And and this is what a lot of the evidence says, is that if we are going to find a life purpose, we have to first find a passion. And that's a really important thing. And Dana kind of shared a little bit about that with her story and really developing a passion for her field of study. And you definitely took initiative, and you took a risk, and doing so requires living courageously. And you've demonstrated that, and through your mother's memory, you now have a very clearly defined purpose that you've devoted yourself to. So I expect to see great things from you in the future. So thank you for sharing your story. I'm going to hand it over to Caterina now to share a bit about her journey.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone. So my name is Caterina, and I live in KAUST since 2014. And my story starts with Andy, because Andy gave a TED talk in which he spoke about how running saved his life. And he gave evidence about how exercise changes the structure of your brain, helps you find depression. And that talk that I attended was stuck with me. At that time, I was weighing more than 300 pounds, which is more than 150 kilograms, okay? So I could really barely walk, and I had pain everywhere in my body. But I didn't take action till then. And after a few months that Andy gave the talk, my mom passed away. She had multiple myeloma, like Husein's mom. She fought this cancer for 4 years, and that was very hard for me because I was here in Saudi Arabia while she was fighting with cancer, and I had a small child that I had to take care of. So I was not able to be with her as I wanted to be. So after she died, that talk came into my mind because I felt the most devastating pain I could ever feel. I cannot even describe how I felt. I just wanted to die after she died. But I couldn't do this. I had a son to take care of, and I had a dad that was alone after my mom died, and he loved my mom so much. So I said, you know what, I might give this exercise thing a try, but I was so heavy I couldn't move. So I just started to walk. This was the only thing I could do, but even walking was so painful. So I was just doing 30-second walk, 30-second rest, then 1 minute walk, 1 minute rest. And I have my friend Rose, she walked with me many times, and I slow her down a lot, but she never complained. And I realized that really exercising was helping me, and even if it was a little thing that I could do, was really keeping me out of depression. But 10 months after my mom died, my dad died. And it was an accident. He was not sick. It was January 1st, so New Year's Day. I called him on the phone, and he was so happy because he was crazy about chocolate. And every year I was sending him the best chocolate ever so he could enjoy. And he told me, I just had the best breakfast ever. I just had chocolate for breakfast. And I remember that it was the first time that I could see him smiling after my mom died. And I was so happy about that. But after 30 minutes, my brother called me and he told me that my dad fell off the stairs and died. So until now, I cannot even think about how is this possible that a person that I was talking to 30 minutes before dies like this. And this gave me immediately the sense of how life is really short, unpredictable, and you cannot plan anything. You just have to enjoy to the fullest every day. So after my dad died, I went back to a very dark place, and I realized that I needed help. But I understood that training, that exercising was my medicine. So I went to the gym here in KAUST, and I looked for the biggest and most muscular personal trainer I could find, because I wanted someone that could really kill me. And I met this person. His name is Amen Lofty, and he really changed my life, because I met him, and I can still remember the look in his eyes. He was like, what can I do with this very severely obese woman in her 40s? And I told him my story, and he just stayed silent. Then he took my hand and he told me, I will help you with this. And he really did help me. Like, he killed me every day. He made me cry, he made me vomit. It was awful and amazing, because basically he taught me how to build resilience. I always perceived myself as a very weak person, but because of him and because of what happened to me, I was able to transform this tragedy in something good for myself. And I started to fall in love with training, and especially weightlifting. And at a certain point, after a few months, he told me, you should be a personal trainer. And I was like, yes, whatever. Did you see me? How can I be a personal trainer? He was like, no, you will be the best trainer because you understand what people are going through. So he basically forced me to study to become a personal trainer. And it was the best thing ever. I took my certification, I studied very hard, and I became a personal trainer with the goal to be a voice for people like me, for people that don't fit the image of the fit people of the personal trainer, but people can relate to me and can understand that if I can make it, if I can lift weight, if I can run, if I can jump, everyone can do it. So I decided that I really wanted to be an example for everyone else, and to transform this bad tragedy that happened in my life in something good. My dad was an amazing, positive person. He was always able to find good in anything. So with this attitude in my mind, that my dad was like always telling me, until I die, I will smile. No? With this attitude in my mind, I kept on pushing and fight all the battles. And being a severely obese person is very difficult, is an horrible life. Everything, it hurts, there is pain everywhere, and you feel awkward, and people look at you like you are a strange case. And people think that it's just about, oh, she eats too much. Instead, there is a lot behind that. In my case, there was a lot of emotional eating, a lot of unresolved issues, no? That I didn't face until I was 3 years old. Then I decided, well, now it's time that I really face my own things. And I started also to go to therapy. And at a certain point last year, I thought, okay, I have everything under control. Now I know what I'm doing. I have my timeline, and I will do this. And then pandemic happened, and I really had another difficult moment. It was very hard on me, and I kind of stopped my progress because I realized that my mental health was not really good as I thought it was, and I didn't want to substitute an addiction that is food with another one that is training. I just wanted to face my demons, okay? And I decided to do this. And I stopped my progress for a while, as I told you, but that was amazing because it gave me time to focus on my mind, on my mental health, of what I want to achieve, of what I want to be. And keeping this in mind, I realized that I needed to find the real purpose of my life. And the real purpose of my life is to help people to transform their life in any field that they want this transformation. I want to be the the help that they need. So I decided, okay, I know what I need to do. I want to become a life coach, and I started to study for this. And to become a life coach, you have to train actually people for some hours to get certified. And I started to train people, to coach people, and I really see how they respond to me and how their life is changing. One of the person I coach is here, and yesterday he told me, I don't know what would have done without you during the last few months. You really changed my life, and I know what it means, because for me, my personal trainer was the person who changed my life. So I know that feeling of gratitude, of being really so happy that someone is handing you his hand because you are in need in that moment. So I want to experience that feeling, and I constantly fight with what Andy was saying before, the imposter syndrome, because I still am overweighted, and I still don't have my life together. So I constantly have to fight with this, and to fight with this, I always look for evidence of good. The evidence that I'm doing the right thing, the evidence that I'm impacting people's life, the evidence that someone is inspired by me. But I have constantly to do this, and I constantly have to fight with this, because I don't have my life together, and no one has it. And I think that the most beautiful thing for everyone is vulnerability. I am very proud to be a vulnerable person, and to have always side that I want to change, that I want to improve. And also I'm very proud of the fact that I never give up. Resilience for me is bouncing back constantly, all the time, no matter what. Who knows me know that no matter what, I don't give up. Like, it's impossible. It's really not an option for me. This is how I am built. And this is what I want to transfer to you, that you can really bounce back from everything in life. And no matter what, life ends just the day when we die. My dad always told me that until we die, we always have a possibility. So that is my message for you today.
Caterina, thank you very much. You know, and in knowing your story, I know that you have made slow and steady progress over time. And it's this idea, and this is rooted in evidence as well, as when we're pursuing something greater than ourselves or pursuing being our best, the idea of 1% better every day over time with consistency is what leads to success. And everybody in the audience, that's really important to understand. So Caterina, thank you very much. I'm going to hand it over now to Tala to share her story.
Hi. Hello. Hi. My name is Tala. I'm a clinical psychologist. I was born and raised in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I'm going to reflect on my resilience story from a professional perspective. And I'm going to use a timeline format. So my story starts in 1988, at the age of 18. I knew then that my purpose in life was to become a psychologist and to open a psychological services in my community. Now, when I graduated high school, I knew that I needed to get a psychology degree in order to become a psychologist. At that time, traveling abroad was not an option. So King Abdulaziz University here in Jeddah did not have a psychology degree. Okay, so how am I going to become a psychologist if I don't get a psychology degree? Luckily, after researching, I found that sociology major had some psychology courses. So I thought, okay, Tala, that's fine. Maybe doing sociology will get me closer to learning about psychology, psychological theories, by doing all the classes that have to do with psychology. So I did that, and luckily, 2-3 years down the line, I had the opportunity to travel to the UK to do my BA. So in 1994, at the age of 24, I got my BA in psychology. And during my BA, it was very clear that I needed to do a master's and a doctorate in order to specialize further in this field. So the challenges came when I returned at the age of 24, 25. At that time, I faced 3 challenges. I wanted to work as a psychologist, but there were no available psychology posts for psychologists. It was mainly psychiatry based at that point, especially psychologists with a BA. The second challenge, and the third, these are challenges that I faced all the time, until now to a certain extent. The second one was the high stigma revolving or around mental health. And the third one is the socially constructed ideas about gender roles, specifically women's roles in our society and our culture. So you can imagine these three challenges transpired all together. So the first 6 months, I could not find a job. Everybody was saying, everybody as in like more society than family, they were saying, why do you want to be a psychologist? Why do you want to work with crazy people? Nobody's going to come to you. People with low faith will go to psychologists, so why should we come to you? You're a woman, why do you want to work? You should find a nice husband and just settle and have kids. So imagine all these three things were just like, they were voices coming at me wherever I went. So for about 6 months, I did hit rock bottom. I doubted my purpose. I just found myself in a black hole. I didn't know what to do. And that time, there's no internet even, so I couldn't even take courses online or anything. Interestingly, when I hit rock bottom, there was a point where something switched on. I was like, okay, Tala, take a step back, breathe. You have a choice. Either you stay in that rock bottom, in that darkness, and sulk, or use that energy to do something that will bring you closer to your purpose. And luckily, I did the second thing. So I just got up there and said, you know what, there's no psychology post. I will make the post. So for the next 4 years, I worked as a counselor in a welfare society with young people. So that was the greatest experience because I was exposed to psychologists, psychiatrists, and I really got to know how the system is. That opened a door to go to do my master's. So in 2000, at the age of 30, I got my MSc from UCL in psychology. So when I came back, I worked as a psychologist and I started my family. By then I was married. After 5 years of working and really seeing how much my clients valued the work that I did with them, that really confirmed that my purpose and that I really need to push it forward. I did a lot of psychoeducation. I went to the schools and I saw that when you open that door, people wanted to come. So I kind of ignored all the other voices and what people were saying, what you should do, and I just focused on my purpose. So after 5 years, I was like, okay, that itch, like, okay, I need to do something. Let me do my doctorate. But at that time, because of family circumstances, it was just not the right time. Again, but this time I learned how to be more resilient. I only sulked for 2 months. And I was like, okay, Tala, fine, step back, take a breath back. Maybe you're not meant to be, or to do your doctorate now. It doesn't mean I forget about that. Maybe I could do it in a couple of years. So I always thought when one door closes, something else will open. So just be open to the possibilities, to the signs. So I thought, okay, what else did I want to do? I wanted to do the center. So like, okay, Tala, this is the right time to do the center. There is a need. So I partnered with 3 other Saudi female psychologists, and we established the first psychological services in my community. Now, the second challenge presented itself. By this time, I kind of built a lot of resilience. So I was like, okay, where is the challenge? Let me face it head on. The challenge came when we opened the psychological services. The legislations in Saudi, they did not have licensure for psychological services. It was more psychiatric, and we really wanted to focus on psychology. So a lot of people told us, okay, the easiest route is to get licensed by the Ministry of Social Affairs. You could get it in 3 months. The Ministry of Health did not have this licensure. So of course, which route did we choose? That route, because we really felt like psychology is a mental health, it's a health issue, so the Ministry of Health should have or be open to psychological services. So it took us 4 years of pushing, of trying to convince them, of showing them why psychological service should be licensed. And luckily, we were the first psychological service in Jeddah that got that license. But that journey, we lost, we were pushing through finances, we were pushing through convincing everyone, but it was lovely because I was certain that at the end, we will persevere. So working with amazing people and individuals also affirmed to me that I need to move forward with my purpose and I need to expand my knowledge to the doctorate level. So in 2017, I got accepted in the doctorate program, and I'm very proud to say that in November 2021, at the age of 50, I received my doctorate in clinical psychology from King's College. So it's really amazing. I'm very proud of myself. So when I was writing all this down and writing my lifeline, I realized it took 30 years from discovering my purpose with certainty till now. And I was just reflecting on that, and I was reflecting on what really gave me that push, what made me that resilience. And I think what it was is I loved what I do, and the more I work, the more I just have a passion. So I wasn't going to listen to everyone telling me, you're leaving everybody, you're leaving your space, you're leaving your family, and going abroad to study. I just felt I needed to do this. Also, I cultivated a compassionate voice. I came across this Buddhist saying, do not let fear stop you from reaching your potential. So whenever the fear came, I would tell myself, Tala, do not let fear stop you from reaching your potential. Just face the fear and just do it. And that really helped me. Of course, the support of family is very important. My boys are very supportive, and my biggest support is my husband. When he met me, he believed in me, in my passion, and he made a lot of that happen. So when I felt down, when I felt like I couldn't push any further, he would be by my side to push me and to encourage me. So now at this stage, it's like a new stage for me. I'm still looking forward to the future, and I'm ready to face whatever challenges that come. So I think looking at my story, the morale of it is things will happen if you believe in it, even if it took time, because even throughout this time, I thrived, I worked, I changed perception about mental health. There's a lot of beautiful things happen when you are on your journey. It is a journey. So, that's fine.
Okay, Tala, thank you very much. And, so many similar stories up with the panelists in terms of being resilient. And in Tala, in your case, it was always finding a way to make it happen and taking initiative to make it happen. And each of the panelists who have spoken today have clearly demonstrated their ability to take action, to not just sit and be complacent and accept uncertainty and to be controlled by external circumstances, but instead to take action to make it happen. And in Tala's case, it took many years, but she stayed aligned to her purpose. So this is what we're trying to emphasize today, is the importance of knowing your purpose. And for the sake of time, I had some questions that I was going to ask each of the panelists, but I would rather hand it over for some Q&A now. But I do want to share a quote with you. And it's the importance of really bringing self-awareness to our own inner voice. And this is one of my favorite quotes. And we have a huge chalkboard wall in our family home. And I put quotes up on the wall, and my wife puts quotes up on the wall that matter to us, that we want to share with our boys, so that we can teach them the life lessons needed for them to build resilience. And the quote is, "The power broker in your life is the voice that no one hears. How well you revisit the tone and content of your private voice is what determines the quality of your life. It is the master storyteller. And the stories we tell ourselves are our reality." So it's so important to be aware of our own inner voice. And again, for the sake of time, I wanted to ask some specific questions to each of the panelists, but they've shared so many important messages that are common. Having a life purpose, staying aligned, understanding that when we believe that we are imposters, that we can look for the good in our life and look for the evidence in our life that proves that we are not imposters. In Dana's case, really staying aligned to her life purpose. Each of the panelists have their life purpose. So I'm going to hand it over to the audience right now for Q&A. I'm assuming we have about 5 more minutes, maybe 10 more minutes max. If there are no questions from the audience, I will ask a question to the panelists, but I can't see the audience right now. The picture of the audience has disappeared. So does anybody in the audience have a question? If so, please raise your hand. And I can't see if anybody's raising their hand or not.
Not yet.
Not yet?
I can pass on the, you're okay? Yeah.
Okay, thank you all. I'm so glad I came here to listen to your stories, and I'm really inspired by your real life stories. And I'm so astonishing that you have your life purpose in an early age, like 20 or just 25, something like that. But how can you be so resilient if you don't exactly have a clear life purpose at age like 20 or 25, even later 30? How can you still live with a purposeless life? How can, yes, something like that. Thanks.
What are you asking this question to?
How can be resilient if you don't still, so which, everyone.
I can give a comment on it. As you could have heard from a lot of the panelists, before we ever use the word resilience, there's always a big challenge, some big life event and adversity that happens. And so it's amazing if there isn't one, but if there isn't, what you can do is get yourself out of that comfort zone and put yourself in more challenging situations. Because we know this is an example from medical science classes, but if you apply a load or a stress on your body, okay, on a bone, it actually starts building cells there, osteoblasts, they start building bone there. And so our body is able to become stronger upon a stressful load, a stressful situation, a challenge. So if you find yourself very comfortable, then go look, put yourself in a challenging situation. One example is once I finished my PhD and all of that, I was in the UK for 8 years and I felt very comfortable. And I decided I'm gonna challenge myself, and I went and I did my postdoc in the US. And it was a big, big challenge. COVID hit and all of that. But I did put myself in the situation where I knew I could teach myself something. So that would be my comment on that.
Thanks, Dana. Any other questions?
Well, I'll answer that question if that's okay as well.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe it feels like the purpose, there has to be a purpose that's like a huge, big purpose. Let's not forget, for some of us, there has to be a purpose for resilience to be there, or a huge purpose for resilience to be there, exactly. But if even the idea of purpose, it could be as simple as finishing a task. It could be as simple as waking up in the morning. Some of us cannot wake up in the morning, so that takes a lot of resilience for them to get up out of that bed. How to build resilience? We build it through small milestones. So let's say your purpose for this month is to finish a paper. So it takes a lot of resilience to be determined and to be focused and to do the extra work to actually reach that. Through that small goal, you learn resilience. So let's not feel like you have to have a huge purpose, as in like life altering. It could be a small purpose, but it's important for you. And you might face things that will stop you from doing it. And just pushing yourself to do it and pushing yourself extra to do it, that is building resilience.
I also wanted to add something. Don't think that you have to have your life figured out at your age. You will actually not have it figured out until you leave, because there is always something new happening. You will have something different to face all the time. So you, as she was saying, you don't need to have that great purpose. But building resilience, you do it through small habits every day. So I totally agree with what she was saying, but also to the young people, I could be your mom, don't think that you need to have your life figured out, because this is not true.
Husein, did you want to add anything?
I think they covered most of the things.
Okay. Okay, so again, I can't see the audience right now. I don't see anything but my slideshow. So are there any other questions? Does anybody have their hand up?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No.
So I think for the sake of time, we're at 55 minutes now. So that's probably all the time that we have for today. Is there somebody from the WEP committee that's around right now that can close us off?
No, doesn't look like it.
Okay. So I'm not sure the amount of time we have left. If we have a couple more minutes, do we have a couple more minutes? Anybody give a thumbs up? Dana, I'll just rely on you.
Hi, Andy. Yeah, you do have 4 minutes, so it's okay. You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Okay, so let's just return back to the themes that we have unpacked and double clicking on resilience. So I would ask the panel right now, if they want to just share, why don't we just do this, okay? Why don't we just share one final message based on the themes that we kind of double clicked on and unpacked. I know each of the panelists didn't have a lot of time today, but what's most important is just really initiating a discussion around resilience. So I'd like to hand it back to the panel right now, just for any closing words, a quick message that you want people to remember as they leave our session today. So Husein, I don't want to put you on the spot, but and it doesn't have to be one of the themes that you see up on the screen right now, but just one final message, then you can just pass the microphone over to the next person.
Yeah, sure. I would like to end with the point of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. It's interesting, Dana, you spoke about how the body adapts to stress. Now, as an athlete, that's how we work. It's not a discussion of whether or not to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. That's how we get better. If I'm, doing a leg press 200 kilos every week, I'm not going to improve. The way the body improves is you tear the muscles by increasing the weight, and then you get better. So that can be translated to your line of work, where academics and much smarter people than I am challenge themselves to difficult tasks and develop skills in that regard. There's one story where you hear about it a lot, pushing yourself and pushing to the limits, and a lot of cliche quotes like that. But there's one experience where I truly understood what that meant. Was in the Asian Championships in 2019. I was actually leading the race. I was in the gold medal position for so the race is 2,000 meters, and I was in the leading position in gold for 1,900 meters. Usually, if you're leading at that point, you're going to win. And I was already I pushed beyond my capabilities. In the last 100 meters, I actually collapsed. I went from first to third, and once crossed the line, I actually fell, and I was I couldn't move my legs at all. I'm not even exaggerating. I think I was paralyzed for 5 minutes. My legs were completely dead. And on one hand, you can say I failed to secure the gold because I went from first to third and literally with 9 strokes left. But all I could think of was, wow, I just went somewhere I had no idea I could go. I lost vision for a bit, I lost hearing for a bit towards the end, and I've never been there. And I was just lying there where everyone was just scrambling and trying to help. I was just thinking, wow, that was cool. Really, it was, and they put me in an ambulance for about 15 minutes, and I was hyperventilating for 15. They gave me glucose and oxygen, and I couldn't help but think, I have now unleashed an extra 5% of my capabilities. 5% in 2,000 meters is huge. That's the difference between 5th place and 1st. 5% now in your field, imagine unleashing 5 or 10%. That's enormous in the grand scheme of things. So, my point is just don't be afraid to push yourself to the limits, because you will unleash the beast. within. I sound like Tony Robbins, but
Yeah. Well, Husein, I just want to mention, just as you hand the microphone over, one of my favorite quotes is, "The cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek."
boom.
So you clearly demonstrated that by pushing yourself to the limit. You know, it's a scary thing, but look at the treasure that you were left with. So, okay, next speaker.
I think I've said a lot about resilience today, but I wanted to bring it back to perspective for a lot of our audience. A lot of our audience are, researchers and scientists and PhDs and master students that are just at the start of their journey. And I can see in the audience some people who have come to my door at the beginning of when I was hired, and they came asking for advice about what to do next and how to navigate this challenge and how to navigate that. And they asked me, how did you do it? And I just wanted to come back and say that there's no one formula to become a more resilient person or one formula for success. And don't let that fear or that stress about the situation of becoming the first, right, or becoming the best researcher, publishing this paper or that paper, stop you from trying, from keeping going every day. So yeah, I wanted it to be a more hopeful ending. You've heard a lot of very sad stories, but it's not supposed to be that way. You should look at kind of the hopeful side of it and how we started from somewhere and we ended up somewhere else, and it's a very different route and a very different timeline from person to person in the panel. So I want you just to keep that in mind, that every person has their own timeline and every person has a different life journey, and there's no right one, there's no wrong one. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, thank you, Dana. And what comes to mind is, instead of looking at like the stories we heard today, very sad stories, but what has come up is the idea of post-traumatic growth. And that is a concept now that people are exploring, is that through struggle, we become even better. And that's the idea of post-traumatic growth. So thank you very much. Okay, next speaker.
Yeah, what I would say is that if you want something, believe with certainty that you can get it. Know that if one door closes, another door will open, and just move forward and push through to reach your purpose.
Thank you very much, Tala. Caterina, close this up.
To me, I would like to emphasize the importance of small steps, because we always hear about go big or go home, like whatever. No, you can also go small and don't go home and keep going, because the small steps will really lead you to a long way. If you're trying to do bigger step than you are able to do, even pushing yourself, you might feel overwhelmed and discomfort. And also focus on what you have right now, because every one of us, even in the worst situation, has something to be grateful of. For me, every day I write at the end of the day on my journal 3 things that I've been grateful of in that day. And when I read back in the days, I realize that even in the worst days, and trust me, I had bad days, even in the worst days, there is something that I've been grateful of. So just don't forget how blessed we are in our daily life, because we have something going on, some struggle, and so just be present in the moment, be mindful, don't get too much anxiety for the future, because the future is just a sum of your present. So if you do the right thing every day, small thing, and you keep on bouncing back when you're not doing the right thing, because sometimes we cannot, you will arrive to your goal, you will meet your goal step by step. This is my final quote.
Okay, thank you very much, Caterina. So Dana, I want to thank you for your time today. Husein as well, amazing story. Thank you. Caterina, as always, thank you for sharing your life story. And Tala, thank you very much. I look forward to meeting you all in person one day. And to the web committee, thank you for allowing me to still be a part of this discussion and to beam me in like Star Trek from Canada, from abroad. And I hope to be back at KAUST soon. So audience, a round of applause for our panelists today.